Think back to being 9 years old. While other kids were arguing about whose turn it was on the swing, you were reading the room, checking the temperature, watching your mom's face when she picked up the phone to figure out if tonight was going to be okay or not. You weren't playing, you were working. You just didn't have a word for it yet. Adults loved you for it. They called you mature, an old soul, so responsible. And you held on to those words because they were the closest thing to feeling safe that anyone ever gave you. But here's what no one said out loud. You weren't mature. You were recruited. Your family needed someone to hold things together, and you were the one who showed up. Not because you chose to, because no one else did. And the part that follows you into adulthood isn't the competence. It's everything that got left behind. There's a name for what happened to you. Psychologists call it parentification, when a child takes on emotional or practical responsibilities that belong to the adults around them. But you don't need the term. You already know what it felt like. It felt like being small and tired at the same time. It felt like being proud of yourself for handling things and quietly devastated that you had to. The first thing it looks like now is this. You walk into a room, and within seconds, you know exactly who's tense, who's performing fine, and where the friction is. You hear a certain tone in someone's voice, and your body responds before your brain catches up. Shoulders tighten, breath shortens. You're already preparing. This isn't intuition as a gift. It's a nervous system that spent years doing threat detection as a survival strategy. You learned to read people because getting it wrong had consequences. That skill didn't disappear when you left home. It just kept running. In every room, in every relationship, whether you need it or not. The second thing it looks like is that you do everything alone. Not because you prefer it, because asking for help was trained out of you. When you were small, asking meant being ignored, or sighing at, or being told you were old enough to figure it out. So your brain made a calculation. Needing something from people is risky. Better to carry it yourself. Better to manage. Now someone offers to help you and you say no before you've even thought about it. You solve the problem alone and only tell people after. You get to the end of something completely depleted and realize no one knew you were struggling because you never let them see it. It's not strength. It's a very old form of self-protection that doesn't know the danger is gone. The third thing it looks like is that rest doesn't feel safe. When things get quiet, when there's no crisis, no one to fix, nothing to manage, you don't relax. You get uncomfortable. Your mind starts creating things to worry about. You feel like you're forgetting something. Calm feels suspicious. Because when you were growing up, calm was often just the pause before something broke. Your nervous system never got the signal that peace is allowed. So it keeps looking for the emergency, and if it can't find one, it manufactures one. This is why you're productive, but never feel finished. The bar keeps moving because the real goal was never the task. It was feeling safe. And that feeling never quite arrives. Here's where it started. The first root is that someone handed you a role before you were ready for it. Maybe your parent vented to you about their marriage. Treated you like a confidant instead of a child. On the surface, it felt like closeness. But what was actually happening was that the line between your emotional world and theirs dissolved. You learned that your job was to manage their feelings, not your own. And you've been doing that job ever since. The second root is that your needs were consistently deprioritized, not necessarily through cruelty, sometimes through absence, through a parent who was drowning themselves and couldn't see that you were too. When a child's needs go unmet often enough, they don't keep asking. They adapt. They learn to need less, to take care of themselves so quietly that no one has to be bothered. That adaptation saved you then. but it calcified into a belief that your needs are a burden, that wanting things makes you difficult, that the right thing is to manage alone and be grateful you can. The third root is that love felt conditional on usefulness. You were praised when you helped, when you were steady and responsible and didn't fall apart. So you built your entire sense of self around that. Being capable became being lovable. Being needed became belonging. And now when you're resting or struggling or simply existing without producing anything, something in you feels wrong, like you're taking up space you haven't earned. You don't know how to just be, because just being was never enough before. So what do you do with all of that? The first thing is to let yourself grieve it honestly, not because it's therapeutic, because it's true. There was a version of you that should have gotten to be small and messy and taken care of. You don't have to reframe what happened to something that made you stronger. You're allowed to say, that was too much for a 9-year-old. And it was. That's not being ungrateful. That's being honest. The second thing is to practice letting people in, small and specific. The next time someone offers help, pause before you answer. Then say yes to something small. Let someone handle one thing you would normally handle alone. It will feel uncomfortable. That discomfort isn't weakness. It's your nervous system encountering something unfamiliar. You're not wired for receiving yet. That's not a character flaw. It's just practice you haven't had enough of. The third thing is to notice when you're white-knuckling the wheel. As a child, you were handed the steering wheel of something you were too small to drive. And you learned to reach for it anyway, to grip it, to keep everything on the road. But some of the things you're still steering, relationships, other people's emotions, situations that were never yours to control, you can let go of them. The car doesn't crash when you stop gripping. It just moves differently, with less effort, with someone else's hands on the wheel for once. That 9-year-old did an extraordinary job. They held things together that adults should have been holding. They read rooms that shouldn't have needed reading. They made themselves useful and steady and indispensable because that was how they stayed safe. But you're not 9 anymore. The hypervigilance, the hyper-independence, the compulsive usefulness, those were brilliant adaptations. They worked. And now they're costing you more than they're protecting you. You're allowed to let go of the wheel, not because you figured everything out, but because you've been gripping it long enough. And somewhere inside you, that child is still there, not broken, not lost, just waiting for someone to finally tell them it's okay to rest. That someone is you. If this hits something you've never had words for, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to keep going deeper, the next video is already there. Still Psychology. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.